Before the sun rises, before the city wakes, before the day begins its noise and its demands, a Hindu household stirs, a lamp is lit, water is drawn, sacred words are spoken, flowers are offered, incense rises. The day begins not with a phone screen or a news broadcast, but with an act of deliberate, conscious connection to the divine. This is not a special occasion. This is not a festival or a holy day. This is an ordinary Tuesday morning. And it looks like this in hundreds of millions of homes across India, across Southeast Asia, across the Hindu diaspora, in every corner of the world. Because one of the most distinctive and most profound aspects of Hinduism is this: it does not divide life into sacred time and ordinary time. It does not separate Sunday worship from weekday living. It does not confine the divine to a building or a service or a special moment. For the practicing Hindu, every moment is potentially sacred. Every action, rightly performed and rightly understood, is an act of worship. Every meal, every bath, every threshold crossed, every breath drawn, every word spoken, all of it can be Dharma. All of it can be offering. All of it can be God. Today we explore what that actually looks like. The daily rituals, the sacred practices, the rites of passage, and the art of living that together constitute the Hindu way of life. The Hindu day does not begin at sunrise. It begins approximately 96 minutes before sunrise, in the period called Brahma Muhurta, which translates as the hour of Brahma or the hour of the Creator. Hindu cosmology understands time as qualitatively differentiated. Not all moments are equal. Some times are more conducive to spiritual practice than others. And the hour before dawn is considered the most auspicious time of all, the moment when the world is still quiet, the mind has not yet been claimed by the day's distractions, and the veil between the individual consciousness and the divine is at its thinnest. The Ashtanga Hridayam, one of the classical texts of Ayurveda, the Hindu science of health, describes the ideal beginning of the day. One should wake up during Brahma Muhurta to protect life and attain prosperity and religious merit. At this time, the mind is naturally calm. The body is refreshed from sleep. The air is pure. This is the best time for meditation, study of scripture, and spiritual practice. The first act upon waking in the traditional Hindu household is not to check messages or make coffee. It is to look at one's own hands, to hold them before the face in the darkness before dawn, and recite a simple prayer. In the front part of my hands dwell Lakshmi, in the middle dwell Saraswati, in the base of my hands dwell Govinda, the Lord. Therefore, I look at my hands first thing in the morning. This act, pausing to look at the hands that will perform the day's actions, is a moment of consecration. It is a recognition that the hands are not merely tools for getting things done. They are instruments through which the divine acts in the world, and the day begins by acknowledging that. After rising, the traditional Hindu practice involves immediately touching the earth with the feet, but first asking her forgiveness for the act of walking on her. The earth is not mere matter to be used. She is a sacred being, Bhumi Devi, the earth goddess, and the first steps of the day begin with gratitude and reverence toward her. So, earth, who is held by the Lord, the golden-chested one, forgive me for touching you with my feet. Then comes the ritual bath. Bathing in Hindu practice is not merely a matter of physical hygiene. It is a sacred act of purification, the cleansing of not just the body, but of the subtle energies accumulated during sleep. The bath is accompanied by specific mantras, sacred sounds that activate the purifying power of water and connect the act of bathing to its deeper spiritual significance. The water poured over the body during the morning bath is understood as sacred. It contains the presence of the 7 sacred rivers of Hindu tradition: the Ganges, the Yamuna, the Godavari, the Saraswati, the Narmada, the Sindhu, and the Kaveri. A mantra invokes all 7 rivers into the water before the bath begins, so that even a person bathing in an ordinary bathroom in a modern city can participate in the purifying power of the most sacred waters on earth. After the morning bath comes the central act of Hindu daily religious life, the puja. Puja is the ritual of divine encounter. The word comes from the Sanskrit root puj, meaning to honor, to worship, to show reverence. And it is exactly that, a formal, structured, deeply personal act of honoring the divine presence in a specific form. Every Hindu household has a puja room or a puja corner, a dedicated space where the family's chosen deity or deities are enshrined. The shrine might be elaborate, a specially constructed room with marble flooring, multiple deity images, and the full complement of ritual vessels. Or it might be simple, a small shelf in the corner of a bedroom with a single photograph of a beloved deity, a small lamp, and a few flower petals. The form matters less than the intention. What makes a space sacred is not its size or its materials, but the consistent practice of approaching the divine with reverence and love. The puja itself follows a prescribed sequence of acts that mirrors the way an honored guest would be received in a traditional Indian home. The deity is understood as a royal guest, the highest possible guest, the divine itself, and every act of the puja is an act of hospitality toward that guest. The sequence begins with avahana, the invocation, the formal request for the deity to be present in the image or in the dedicated space, then asana, the offering of a seat, then padya, the washing of the feet with water, then arghya, the offering of water for sipping, then akamana, water for rinsing the mouth, then snana, bathing the deity image with water, milk, yogurt, honey, and clarified butter, then vastra, the offering of fresh clothing or fabric, then yajnapavita, the offering of the sacred thread, then gandha, the application of sandalwood paste, then pushpa, the offering of flowers, then dupa, the offering of incense, then deepa, the waving of an oil lamp before the deity, then naivedya, the offering of food, then tambula, the offering of betel leaf and nut, and finally pradakshina, the circumambulation of the deity, and namaskara, the full prostration of the body before the divine presence. This sequence, Shodashopachara, the 16 forms of honoring, is not a routine to be rushed through. Each act is an opportunity for conscious, loving attention to the divine. Each offering is a gesture of the heart as much as a physical act. The Bhagavad Gita 9.26 expresses the spirit of this offering. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or even water, I will accept it. It is not the size or the cost of the offering that matters. It is the love with which it is given. A single flower offered with complete attention and genuine devotion is more valuable in Hindu theology than a lavish ceremony performed mechanically and without feeling. After the puja comes the arti, the waving of a lamp before the deity in a circular motion. The lamp, typically a brass lamp holding 5 wicks or a single camphor flame, is moved in slow circles before the deity while a devotional hymn is sung. The warmth and light of the flame represents the worshipper's own inner fire of devotion being offered to the divine. At the end of the arti, the flame is brought to the devotees who warm their hands over it and then touch their own eyes, receiving the blessing of divine light. The smell of incense, the sound of the bell, the sight of the flame, the feel of the flower petals, the taste of the prasad, the consecrated food that is offered first to the deity and then received back as divine blessing. Hindu puja engages all five senses simultaneously because the divine is not approached only through the intellect but through the entire human being, body and soul together. After the puja, the devotee sits in meditation, dhyana, allowing the mind to rest in the presence of the divine that has been invoked. The external ritual gives way to the internal practice. The offering of flowers and incense and light has created a condition in which the inner offering, the offering of the mind itself, can be made. This transition from external ritual to internal meditation is one of the most sophisticated insights in Hindu religious practice. The outer form is not the goal, it is the preparation. It creates the conditions in which genuine inner contact with the divine becomes possible. In Hinduism, food is not merely fuel for the body, it is prasad, grace. It is medicine. It is a vehicle for consciousness. And the preparation, the offering, and the eating of food are all understood as deeply sacred acts. The system of thought that governs the Hindu understanding of food comes primarily from Ayurveda, the ancient Hindu science of health and well-being, and from the philosophical understanding of the three gunas, the three fundamental qualities that pervade all of existence. The three gunas are sattva, purity, clarity, and harmony; rajas, energy, passion, and agitation; and tamas, heaviness, inertia, and darkness. Everything in the universe, every thought, every action, every food, every environment has a particular combination of these three qualities, and the food we eat directly affects the quality of our consciousness. Sattvic foods, those that are pure, light, and harmonious, include fresh fruits and vegetables, dairy products, grains, nuts, and natural sweeteners. These foods, according to Hindu understanding, promote clarity of mind, calm energy, and spiritual sensitivity. They support meditation, ethical living, and the cultivation of higher consciousness. Rajasic foods, those that are stimulating, heating, and agitating, include onions, garlic, very spicy foods, and meat. These foods promote energy and activity, but also agitation, desire, and restlessness. They are not forbidden. The Bhagavad Gita does not prohibit them, but they are understood to make the cultivation of inner peace more difficult. Tamasic foods, those that are heavy, stale, and consciousness-dulling, include food that has been left standing for long periods, overly processed food, and alcohol. These are understood to promote heaviness, lethargy, and spiritual dullness. Bhagavad Gita 17.8 describes sattvic food. Foods that promote longevity, virtue, strength, health, happiness, and joy, foods that are tasty, soothing, substantial, and agreeable, are dear to those who are pure in nature. Before cooking, the traditional Hindu kitchen is treated as a sacred space. The cook bathes before beginning, because food prepared in a state of physical and mental purity carries that purity into the body and consciousness of those who eat it. Some traditions hold that the thoughts and emotions of the cook are transmitted into the food, so cooking is itself a spiritual practice performed in a state of prayer or mantra recitation. Before eating, the food is first offered to the deity, a practice called naivedya. The food placed before the deity image during puja is understood to be received by the divine and returned as prasad, blessed food, food charged with divine grace. Eating prasad is itself an act of communion, of receiving the direct grace of the divine through the medium of food. After the food is offered and received back as prasad, the meal begins with a brief prayer. Brahman is the ritual. Brahman is the offering. Brahman is the one who offers into the fire of Brahman. Brahman is to be attained by one who sees Brahman in all actions. Bhagavad Gita 4.24. This verse transforms the act of eating into a yajna, a sacred fire sacrifice. The food is the offering. The digestive fire, Jatharagni, the fire in the belly, is the sacred flame, and the eater is the priest performing the sacrifice. Every meal is a ritual. Every meal is an act of worship. The vast majority of traditional observant Hindus practice vegetarianism, particularly among the Brahmin and Vaishnava communities, based on the principle of ahimsa, non-violence. The idea that the food we eat should not involve the taking of life wherever possible. That the consciousness of an animal killed in fear and pain is transmitted into the flesh and ultimately into the consciousness of the person who eats it. But vegetarianism in Hinduism is not a universal requirement. Different traditions, different regions, and different communities have different practices. The Bhagavad Gita does not mandate vegetarianism. The emphasis is on the quality of consciousness with which food is prepared and eaten, rather than on an absolute dietary rule. When most people in the Western world hear the word yoga, they think of a physical practice, of postures performed in a studio for health and flexibility. And while the physical postures, asanas, are certainly part of yoga, they represent only one small branch of a vast and ancient science of consciousness that Hinduism has developed over 4,000 years. The word yoga comes from the Sanskrit root yuji, meaning to yoke, to join, to unite. Yoga is the science of union, the systematic practice of joining the individual consciousness with the universal consciousness, of uniting Atman with Brahman, of achieving moksha, liberation, through disciplined practice. The most comprehensive and systematic presentation of yoga as a science of consciousness is found in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, a text of 196 short aphorisms composed approximately 400 CE that synthesizes the entire yoga tradition into a coherent system. Patanjali describes yoga as Ashtanga, 8-limbed. The 8 limbs are not sequential steps to be completed one at a time. They are 8 simultaneous dimensions of a complete way of life. The first limb is yama, the ethical restraints. 5 principles that govern the yogi's relationship with the world. Ahimsa, non-violence in thought, word, and deed. Satya, truthfulness. Asteya, non-stealing. Brahmacharya, the responsible use of vital energy. And aparigraha, non-possessiveness. The second limb is niyama, the personal observances. 5 principles that govern the yogi's inner life. Shasha, cleanliness of body and mind. Santosha, contentment. Tapas, disciplined self-effort and austerity. Svadhyaya, self-study and study of scripture. And Ishvara Pranidhana, surrender to the divine. The third limb is asana, the physical postures. In Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, asana receives only 3 of the 196 aphorisms. Its purpose is simple: to create a body that is strong, stable, and comfortable strong enough to sit in meditation strong for extended periods without distraction or discomfort. The elaborate system of hundreds of postures developed in Hatha Yoga over subsequent centuries serves this fundamental purpose, preparing the physical instrument for the inner work. The fourth limb is pranayama, the regulation of breath. The discovery at the heart of pranayama is that the breath and the mind are intimately linked. When the mind is agitated, the breath becomes rapid and irregular. When the breath is deliberately slowed, deepened, and made regular, the mind naturally follows toward greater calm. Pranayama uses this relationship to systematically quiet the mind in preparation for meditation. The fifth limb is pratyahara, the withdrawal of the senses from their external objects. The deliberate turning of attention away from sensory experience and toward the inner world of consciousness. This is the bridge between the outer limbs of yoga and the inner limbs. The sixth limb is dharana, concentration, the practice of holding the mind on a single object, a mantra, a deity image, a point in the body, a concept, without allowing it to wander. The seventh limb is dhyana, meditation. When concentration becomes effortless and sustained, when the mind rests on its object without effort or interruption, that is meditation. Not the practice of meditation, but the state of meditation, the natural flowering of sustained concentration. And the eighth limb is samadhi, absorption, the state in which the separation between the meditator, the act of meditation, and the object of meditation dissolves. The state in which the individual consciousness merges with the object of contemplation and ultimately with the universal consciousness. This is the goal toward which the entire eight-limbed system is oriented. Yoga Sutras of Patanjali 1.2 defines yoga in just 4 Sanskrit words. Yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the cessation of the modifications of the mind. When the mind becomes still, when the constant fluctuations of thought, memory, imagination, and emotion quiet down, what remains is pure consciousness, pure awareness. The Atman, the true self, shining in its own light, undistorted by the movements of the mind. This is yoga, not the postures, not the breathing exercises, not the lifestyle choices, but the direct experience of one's own true nature, which is the nature of Brahman itself. If the daily rituals of Hinduism sanctify ordinary time, making every morning, every meal, every meditation an act of worship, then the Hindu rites of passage sanctify the great transitions of human life. These rites, called samskaras, from the Sanskrit word meaning impression or refinement, number 16 in the classical tradition. They mark every significant transition from before birth to after death. Together, they form a sacred map of the human journey, a sequence of rituals that consecrate every major threshold a human being crosses. The first samskara, garbhadhana, is performed at the time of conception, a ritual that consecrates the act of bringing a new soul into the world, acknowledging that the creation of a human life is not merely a biological event, but a sacred one. The second, Pumsavana, is performed in the 3rd month of pregnancy to strengthen the developing child and pray for a healthy birth. The third, Samantanayana, is performed in the 5th or 7th month, a ceremony for the well-being of the mother and the growing child. The fourth, Jatakarma, is performed at birth itself. The father touches the baby's lips with a mixture of honey and clarified butter while whispering the sacred syllable Om into the child's right ear. This is the child's first encounter with the sacred sound of the universe. Its first breath and the sacred sound of Brahman arrive together. The fifth Namakarana is the naming ceremony performed on the 11th day after birth. The child receives its name in a sacred ritual that connects the name to the child's astrological chart, to the deity the family is devoted to, and to the qualities the parents wish to cultivate in the child. The sixth Nishkramana is the first outing, the ceremony in which the child is taken outside and shown the sun and the moon for the first time, a recognition that the child is now a citizen of the cosmos. The seventh Annaprashana is the first feeding of solid food, the moment when the child transitions from milk to grain, performed as a sacred ceremony with prayers for the child's health and prosperity. The eighth Chudakarma, or Mundan, is the ritual first cutting of the hair. The infant's head is shaved for the first time, removing the hair with which the child was born, which is considered to carry the impressions of past lives. The new hair that grows afterward begins fresh. The ninth Karnaveda is the piercing of the ears. Considered in Ayurveda to be a health practice as well as a sacred rite, the earlobe piercing point being connected to important nerve channels. The 10th Vidyarambha marks the beginning of the child's formal education. The child writes its first letters in a tray of rice grains, beginning the lifelong relationship with knowledge. The 11th and most important of all the childhood samskaras, Upanayana, is the sacred thread ceremony. Performed for boys of the three upper varnas, traditionally between the ages of 8 and 12, it marks the transition from childhood to spiritual responsibility. The boy receives the sacred thread, the Yajnapavita, a triple cord worn across the chest from the left shoulder to the right hip. It represents his commitment to pursue knowledge, Dharma, and spiritual growth. And he receives his first instruction in the Gayatri mantra, the most sacred mantra in the Vedic tradition. Rigveda 3.6.2.10 contains the Gayatri mantra, Om Bhurbhuva Sva Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimai Dio Yona Prachodayat. We meditate on the divine radiance of the Supreme Creator who pervades the three realms. May that divine light illuminate our intellect. From the day of his Upanayana, a young man is expected to recite the Gayatri mantra 3 times daily, at dawn, at noon, and at dusk. This practice continues for the rest of his life. And across the centuries, across the millennia, this mantra has been recited more times by more people than perhaps any other sound in human history. The 12th samskara, Vivaha, is the marriage ceremony, one of the most elaborate and most beautiful rituals in all of Hindu tradition. The Hindu marriage ceremony can last several days. Its central ritual, the Saptapadi, or 7 steps, involves the bride and groom taking 7 steps together around the sacred fire, each step representing one of 7 sacred vows. The fire, Agni, witnesses the vows and is understood to carry them into the eternal record of the cosmos. The final samskara, Antyesti, is the funeral rite. The body is cremated, returned to the 5 elements from which it was formed. The eldest son or nearest male relative lights the funeral pyre. The skull is broken to release the soul from the body. The ashes are immersed in a sacred river, ideally the Ganges, and prayers are offered for the peaceful journey of the soul toward its next phase of existence. Death in Hinduism is not the final word. It is a samskara, a transition, a refinement, a threshold to be crossed with sacred attention. The soul that departs the body at death carries with it the accumulated karma of the life just lived and moves toward a new birth shaped by that karma. The cycle continues. The journey goes on. Beyond the 16 samskaras, beyond the rituals that mark the transitions of a single life, Hinduism offers a map of the entire arc of human existence through the concept of the four ashrama, the four stages of life. This system divides the human lifespan into four stages, each with its own dharma, its own set of responsibilities, practices, and spiritual orientation. The first ashrama is brahmacharya, the stage of the student. From the time of upanayana until the completion of formal education, the young person lives in the household of a teacher, the guru, studying the Vedas, developing discipline, serving the teacher, and cultivating the foundation of knowledge and character on which the rest of life will be built. The second ashrama is grihastha, the householder stage. After completing education and returning home, the person marries, establishes a household, and takes on the full responsibilities of adult life. This is the stage of career, family, and social contribution. And in Hinduism, this stage is not considered spiritually inferior to renunciation. The Manusmriti declares the householder stage the greatest of the four, because it is the householder who supports and sustains the other three stages through their generosity and their productive engagement with the world. The third ashrama is vanaprastha, the forest dweller stage. When the children are grown and the household responsibilities are fulfilled, when the hair has begun to gray and grandchildren have appeared, it is time to gradually withdraw from worldly preoccupations and turn the attention increasingly toward spiritual practice. This does not necessarily mean literally going to live in a forest, but it means that the center of gravity of life shifts from outward engagement to inward deepening. Fourth ashrama is sannyasa, the stage of the renunciant, the complete renunciation of all worldly attachments and identities. The sannyasi gives up family, home, possessions, and even name. They live as wanderers, dependent on the generosity of householders for food and shelter, devoting their entire remaining life to spiritual practice and the pursuit of moksha. The Manusmriti 6.33 describes the sannyasi. Having studied the Vedas in accordance with the rule, having begotten sons according to the sacred law, and having offered sacrifices according to his ability, let him retire to the forest. Not everyone passes through all four stages. Many people live entirely in the householder stage. Some skip vanaprastha and move directly to sannyasa. A small number take sannyasa at a young age, renouncing the world before ever entering the householder stage. All paths are legitimate within the Hindu understanding of Dharma, because different souls at different stages of their evolution require different conditions for their growth. The ashrama system reflects a profound wisdom about the arc of human life. Youth is for learning. Maturity is for contributing. Later life is for deepening. And the final stage, whenever it comes, is for returning, for completing the journey that began with the first invocation of Brahman in the newborn's ear and ends in the direct realization of one's own identity with that infinite reality. From the lamplit before sunrise to the prayer whispered at sunset, from the offering of flowers to the sacred image in the morning to the meditation that closes the day, from the first cry of a newborn and the mantra whispered into its ear to the sacred fire that receives the body at life's end. The Hindu way of life is not a set of rules imposed from outside. It is an invitation to experience every dimension of human existence as potentially sacred, to bring conscious awareness and reverent intention to every act, from the grandest ritual to the most ordinary meal. The Taittiriya Upanishad 1.1 1.1 contains a teaching addressed to students completing their education, words that express the spirit of the entire Hindu way of life. Speak the truth, practice Dharma, do not neglect the study of the Vedas. After offering what is dear to the teacher, do not cut the line of progeny, do not swerve from the truth, do not swerve from Dharma, do not neglect your welfare, do not neglect your prosperity, do not neglect study and teaching. Truth, Dharma, learning, family, prosperity, study, teaching, not one to the exclusion of the others, all of them, together, woven into a single integrated life. This is the Hindu way of life, not a religion confined to temples and festivals and sacred texts, but a complete vision of human existence, every moment of which, rightly understood and rightly lived, is an opportunity to move closer to the one reality that underlies all of it. In the final episode of this series, episode 7, we journey to the sacred places of Hinduism, the most holy sites on earth, the cities, the rivers, the temples, and the mountain peaks where the divine and the human have been meeting for 4,000 years. Subscribe so you never miss a new episode. Share this video with someone who wants to understand not just what Hindus believe, but how they live. See you in episode 7.